to half the battle.
Like I said last, year, I don't really like speculating about the future of G.I. Joe. But since there's a chance we might get a G.I. Joe Evergreen line, I might as well give my thoughts on what I believe Hasbro should do to make it a success. In case you're not familiar with the term Evergreen as it relates to toys, but simply, an Evergreen toy line is one that is on the shelves the whole year, every year. So, for example, Barbie is an Evergreen toy line for Mattel, Transformers is one for Hasbro. And there has been speculation and hope that G.I. Joe will once again become an Evergreen toy line.
And because of that, here are 4 things Hasbro must do to make it succeed.
Number 4. Price. Perhaps the most crucial of all, not for us adult collectors, but for the general buying public, i.e. parents. And it's crucial the price point attracts them, because no G.I. Joe line can survive on collectors alone.
There's just not enough of us.
So I propose no more than $10 for a standard figure. And how do you keep costs down? Smaller packaging, and only have one weapon and backpack included. Then also have the same figure, but in a deluxe version, more aimed at collectors. Bigger packaging, more accessories. It's something they also did for Star Wars, and it could work here. Hell, they even did it with G.I. Joe in the past. Also, a vehicle should be between $15 and $35.
Ah yes, that brings me to my next point.
Number 3. Have freaking vehicles. I think we can all agree that a major draw for the G.I. Joe line has always been the vehicles.
Now, we have to be realistic here. The time for stuff like the USS Flag is over. It just costs too much to produce, and there's not enough room on the toy shelves.
Seriously, remember when a single line of action figures and vehicles used to have an whole aisle at a toy store? Good times. So, no USS Flag, HasLab notwithstanding maybe, but a bunch of smaller vehicles. Now they're an absolute must. I know this seems obvious, but nowadays toy lines barely have any vehicles at all, and G.I. Joe needs them. They could even do the regular and deluxe thing for these too. Like, say, have a standard HISS tank with 1 figure, and a deluxe one with 2 figures. A driver and a gunner, who also have accessories. Of course, I picked the HISS tank purely as a random example.
Make more HISS tanks, Hasbro! I need more!
Of course, for there to be plenty of vehicles, there's another aspect of the figures that's important. Number 2. The size of the figures.
Look, 4 inches is all anybody needs. Don't take that quote out of context.
Since the 80s, G.I. Joe has always been most successful at the 3 3/4 to 4 inches size. But lately, Hasbro has been steering away from that in other toy lines, like Avengers and even Star Wars. This may be okay for Avengers, but is problematic for G.I. Joe, though I'll admit some of that is from a collector's perspective. Larger figures just won't fit in with established collections. The problem at retail would be that larger figures means few, if any, vehicles would be made.
And as we've discussed, those are something a G.I. Joe toy line absolutely needs.
So Hasbro really needs to resist the urge to cut out the 4-inch size. I don't mind if there's a different size in addition to our familiar one, but the focus must be on the 1/18th scale.
And lastly,
Number 1. Articulation.
For the love of all that's holy, don't go the Star Wars route!
Star Wars went from highly articulated figures to being back at 1977 levels, basically. No more elbow and knee joints. This would be a disaster for G.I. Joe. The toys need the articulation, not just for play value, but to fit properly in the vehicles.
And that's how I can justify the costs of the G.I. Joe articulation.
If Hasbro keeps the knee and elbow joints, they can reuse all of the old vehicle molds that they still have, saving a bunch of money in not having to create new molds. And those are the things Hasbro has to do for G.I. Joe to have a chance. An important video to start the year with, I think we can all agree. And I didn't make this just because I didn't have time to work on a proper episode due to the New Year's Eve and the surrounding festivities. No, sir.
And it's not like I just had these HISS tanks here lying around to use as props. Okay, I totally did. My house is full of them, and I still want more. You know what, Hasbro? Forget those 4 points. Just make more his tanks and the line will succeed. I'll buy them all.
G.I. Joe! G.I. Joe!
His tank for you, his tank for me. You'll have a his, I'll have one too. His tank for you, his tank for me. I'll have a his, you have one too.